Welcome into Winning at Work. If you're looking for what's trending in the $6 trillion food and beverage industry and you want a fun and lighthearted podcast, look no further. The food and beverage executives and totally awesome brands that are featured here take us deep into the world of sustainability and good for you, organic and farm to table, plant-based, ethically sourced, purpose and mission-based products, CBD-infused food and beverage products, how to build a brand, how to scale a brand, fundraising, and more. Welcome to Winning at Work. I'm Tony Moore, expert headhunter, semi-average podcaster, and I interview the best heads in the business. Want to give these brands a little love? Give them a boost? Well, let's make this a top 10 podcast. Subscribe, give us a rating, follow us on LinkedIn, and leave a comment. You ready to win at work? Let's go. Welcome to Winning at Work, everybody. I am your host, Tony Moore, and I am really excited to introduce to you Greg Gorgone. He's the co-founder and COO at Pineapple Academy. Greg, welcome into the show today.
Well, thank you, Tony. And it's actually pronounced Gorgone. You pronounce the E at the end.
Gorgone. Okay.
I like bologna.
Well, let's just chalk this up to another foot in mouth moment. So hopefully, if that's my only mistake today, then I'm winning. I love the name Pineapple. That to me is the symbol of hospitality, and I don't know. Is that kind of the reasoning behind that?
It's exactly why we did it. Our mission was to create culinary cultures because our viewpoint is a good culinary culture will result in a hospitality environment, both front of the house and back of the house. And so you can't have a good hospitality experience without having great food and great service from the food service staff. So that's how we ended up with Pineapple, and that's why we used it in our name.
What brought about this mission or vision that you have?
I've had the privilege of traveling across the United States, visiting different hospitals and senior living communities and helping them do on-site training and process improvement, projects to help them from anything from menu planning to just general training to full-blown kitchen designs and planning and things like that. Anything food and beverage related, I've been involved in it. And you realize after a while that a lot of the problems that you see in the industry are similar. People are struggling with the same things. And it really comes down to food and beverage fundamentals as far as I'm concerned. I had the privilege of going to culinary school. And so I learned the nitty gritty of how to prepare food at the very beginning of my career. So that's always stuck with me. And it's something I know that has helped me tremendously, but not everybody has that opportunity. But the information is still valid and the information should be shared. And the problem you see, even in kitchens where there might be an actual trained chef running the kitchen, they often don't have enough time to really spend with the staff to train them. And so I felt, along with my business partner, Tucker Graves, we felt that we really need to have a fundamentals type online training experience where it's available to anybody and it's delivered inexpensively, but it's content that food service workers really need to have in order to create a foundation. I think a lot of people leave this business because they're not trained. They don't really understand the opportunities, which are tremendous in food service. It is a huge employer, both in food manufacturing, but across the board, with restaurants and non-commercial and manufacturing and all that and equipment. It's a huge business. And so for people to leave this business without really understanding all the nuances of it makes me a little sad, because I think it's done me very well for 40 years. And I get a big kick out of helping others find their path in food service.
There was a movie years ago called Shangri-La, and it was about these hikers that stumbled upon this absolutely perfect utopia. Of course, that doesn't exist, but in the movie, once they found it, one of them realized it and they stayed, and the other, not realizing it, left.
Yeah.
And after they left, they realized what a mistake, and they
Right.
spent the rest of their life trying to get back. So, interesting parallel that you're drawing between, giving food service workers an understanding of just the potential they have to develop a fascinating career. And frankly, I've heard this story from others that once the food and beverage industry kind of hits you, once you see the passion behind it, you really don't want to leave. So it sounds like what you're doing is you're helping organizations really move into more of a culinary culture.
Correct.
Where all the workers see the potential and you're giving them the tools, you're kind of recreating the environment. So, businesses, frankly, can, I think, solve a little bit of that retention problem that we're seeing right now,
Exactly
which is,
right.
the big issue right now, right?
It really is. I mean, you hear the stories, I've heard this story my entire career, but everybody, talks about how important the dishwasher is or the pot washer. Well, and it's absolutely true. I mean, these are valuable positions and they're indispensable. But what are you doing to help that person? Giving them a job and minimum wage is not helping them in any way. But giving them a job and training them to be proficient at what you've hired them to do, but then also cross-train them into other areas in the operation. Suddenly you have someone who was a pot washer on day one, and a year later, they might be your best line cook. And so it's a little bit hypocritical. I hear sometimes that people, talk about the value of the staff and all that. But if you're not doing something to develop that person and give them the tools for, number one, success in the job you hired them for, but number two, to give them the opportunities to learn other things in the operation so they can, get a pay raise and move up in the organization and have greater opportunities, you're really not doing anybody any favors.
So what industries does Pineapple Academy focus?
We have now entered into an agreement with a reseller of our content who's actually going to take it out to market and sell it across all food service market segments. It could be restaurants, hotels. Anyway, so we have a lot of content like our basic culinary and our commercial kitchen cleaning course that are segment neutral. They apply as long as you have a commercial kitchen and you're producing food of any quantity, the information's valid. Now, when it comes to healthcare and senior living, regulatory compliance aspects, they're not quite the same as the other market segments. And so, we have content around that as well. And that might not be as applicable, say, to a restaurant. But we also offer, as an example, ANSI certified programs from Always Food Safe for the food handler, the 8-hour manager, allergen awareness, which is something that is needed by all food service operations across the country. So we have different tools and things that we have available for everybody. And we'll be making a bigger play over the next couple of years, expanding those offerings to those other non-healthcare market segments.
Well, as I just think through this, I think about fast food chains or grocery stores, C-stores, stadiums. These are places where obviously there's food service workers,
right?
But oftentimes I never get the feeling that it's hospitality driven, right? It's I don't know, maybe we call it transactional, maybe, where
absolutely
it's a job, and they're not thinking, how can I improve the guest experience? How can I give the best products, the best food? So seems to me that there's a huge opportunity here. And this is really why you're here today, because when we were talking kind of offline, you've got some pretty practical steps that you could help, a company that's listening, a CEO
Right.
that's listening to this, right? And they want to transition to more of a, what do you call that? A culinary
Culinary
environment?
culture. Yep.
Culture. Okay.
Right.
Why don't you walk us through, first of all, just give us an overview, just kind of run through an overview, and then maybe we can kind of go into some detail and you can kind of walk us through in more specifics.
Sure. So, I mean, if you instead of looking at what the organization specifically needs in terms of tasks that are done on a regular basis, if you kind of flip the narrative and kind of look at the employee perspective and what their experience is coming into your company, first finding you and then coming into it, if you kind of change your lens to look at that, I think you're going to kind of open your eyes to the experience that your current employees or former employees have experienced. And so, even starting with the interview and onboarding process. I mean, I have witnessed a lot of interviews. I've been in a lot of interviews, and I've conducted a lot of interviews over 40 years. And I've been shocked at some of the, let's say, less than comfortable or nice interviews that I've watched restaurateurs or hotel people give employees. They just treat them like, they really don't mean anything. And so, when you have somebody come to see you and they're interviewing for a job, it's sort of like, that person's time is valuable also. And so I would argue that the interview process is where all this begins, where your culture begins. And so that would be the one of the first things I would say about, look at your interview techniques and look at how you conduct your interviews and what you're trying to accomplish with that. The next thing I would say is what is the onboarding? I mean, I've started jobs and I've seen other people start jobs, like places I'm consulting at or see what happens. And, it's like, this is someone's first day of work. It's a new experience. And it's amazing how much employers or supervisors or managers just take for granted or not put themselves in that person's shoes with enough empathy to realize that this is a very nerve-wracking day. It's a very exciting day, but it's also a nerve-wracking day because you're walking into a situation you don't know anything about. Yeah, it might be food service, and you might be familiar with that, but you don't know the culture. You don't know the people you're going to work with. You don't know who the customers are. There's a lot of things you don't know. And so that first few days, particularly the first day when you walk in the door, what does that experience look like? The food service industry can get, look towards the technology sector and Silicon Valley and see what they do for their new hires. And you can understand why people get attracted to some of these companies. They walk in, the first thing they do is they get swag, they get hats,
Yes.
mugs. It's like, welcome, welcome, welcome. They get taken around, introduced to people. They meet the CEO. They do that. And it's like, hey, welcome to the family. It's like you're part of something bigger now. And we're glad you're here. And we're here to help you and blah, 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 blah. I mean, why wouldn't you want an experience like that? I mean, think about it. It's like, do you want to walk in the door and you're just another, time card to this person? How long are you going to stay there?
Which is why they have this huge turnover problem. Imagine showing up and you get a smock or something with your name embroidered or something.
Right. That's exactly right. Or you walk in the door and you're on your first day, you don't even have uniform parts to give them. How does that make that person feel? It's like, oh, I'm not dressed for the job, or I don't have another classic one is you don't have their name badge and their clocking information ready to go. And, they can't clock in and out for like a week because no one can get around to get this guy in the system and give him a proper badge and ability to clock in and out. I'm sure this is familiar territory to a lot of people, and it's just not very respectful to that employee. The other thing is just understanding that, to build your team, you need to give the new hires, a training tool as soon as they walk in the door. And this idea that you're just going to shadow somebody else is really kind of an old school way of looking at training. Number one, if that trainer is busy, they're not going to give that person the time or attention that they need. Number two, if that person already has bad habits, all they're going to do is teach those bad habits to the new person. And the next thing you know, you don't have an advancement in your culture. You're just doing the same old all the time. And you're going to end up with, guess what? The same outcome you've been experiencing all this time, which is high turnover. And so if you take a few minutes to really evaluate how you recruit, interview, and onboard employees, I think if you can be objective about it and let that empathy come through and just look at it for what it is, I think a lot of people will find that it's not the most pleasant experience to get someone in the door. The other thing is having programs like apprenticeship programs or career development programs. It's like, what are you doing for your people to develop them so that they can move to the next step in the pecking order here? How do I go from pot washer to dishwasher? How do I go from dishwasher to prep cook? How do I go from prep cook to cook? How do I go from cook to line cook? How do I become a supervisor? Or I'm interested in the front of the house. How do I become a busser? How to become a server? How to become a dining room hostess? These are all steps that we've all had to take in this business. And so it should be part of the experience for the employees, regardless of your size, because others have to go on vacation. You as a manager or owner, you're going to want to go on vacation. And this is why people get burnt out in this business, because they don't do enough career development and training of their staff so they can, take up slack when somebody doesn't show up or somebody needs to go on vacation or, God forbid, someone's got to go to a funeral. It's like, it's like you need to be able to live in the real world and understand that things happen. And you're going to need help from your own team. So what a better way than to develop your team and give them skills that they can use in other positions to help support what's going on.
I agree. Talent management should not be reserved just for your superstars and for your future leaders. Yes, you have to have that. But
yes,
what you're really saying is bring people in from the very beginning in that interview process and let them see the kind of path that they could go on.
Yes.
And they take a part in that. They say, here's where I'd like to be. Oh, I can do that. Here's where I want to go. And then eventually you begin to see the gap in their skills. It's pretty straightforward. Right. You're going to need this set of skills. So therefore, as you say, shadowing is not enough, right? They need to do some very specific training so they can start building those skills in that area. It just sounds like common sense, but it's just not being done.
It really isn't. And what I would say also to your audience here and everyone listening is the fact that there are programs actually from both state and federal government to get reimbursed for training dollars if you create an apprenticeship program. So there are approved positions or job functions that are recognized as a profession, like a chef, as an example. That is a recognized profession that you can get reimbursed. If you give that person a training program that's built around the qualifications by the Department of Labor, and you can just call your state Department of Labor, and they're there to serve you and show you what their state requires for you, what kind of paperwork you got to submit, and what they're looking for in these programs. And you do that, there's a little bit of work up front, and it might be a little bit of a pain. But once you get it done and it's submitted, you're off and going. And all you got to do is submit that person's hours and the cost of the training at certain intervals, and you'll get reimbursed for it. So it's not even a budget issue necessarily all the time. So that's something I would definitely highly recommend. And if you don't want to go the Department of Labor route, you certainly can have your own internal apprenticeship programs. Again, with the idea that you want to create future managers and leaders in your organization. I think it's a very important thing. And as part of those apprenticeship training programs, you got to have competency tools and competency checks on the team. So you've got to have designated trainers on staff who can check out the skills when somebody has said they have met the competency of, say, knife skills. Somebody needs to come up and schedule a time with them where they can observe those knife skills. Go, yes, Tony has knife skills now. He can move on to the next thing that he has to learn, as an example. These are like 5-minute interactions, but what it does, it gives everybody in the team an opportunity to show their stuff. It gives the coaches to skill sets on their own to become supervisors and coaches. I mean, all supervisors, managers, and leaders need to be a coach. I mean, I think that's the other message I would say to you is that develop coaches. Let's get our management staff and our supervisors in the mindset that they're there to service the people under them.
Servant leadership.
Pardon?
Yeah, servant leadership.
That's exactly what I was about to say. That's exactly right. So, and this doesn't mean that you're just, you're only there to accommodate them, or, you got to take their dry cleaning to their clothes to the dry cleaner.
Yeah, I better rethink that, because that's what I have my interns do.
So I think, yes, servant leadership is real, and it is something that very successful companies, if you analyze what they're doing, it's definitely that viewpoint where management is there to support the staff, because the staff are getting the work done. And so it's the staff that makes the food. It's the staff that serves the food. It's the staff that has the conversations with your customers. There isn't a business owner out there that can honestly say that I speak to every single customer or service them myself. I mean, it's just not possible. Unless you're a one-man, vending operator, a one-man band, with a hot dog cart, that's just not, there's no truth in it. So I think those are the high level things that I would say that need to get done.
Greg, where can this competency tool come from? Is there a skill base that they can draw from, or do they have to kind of create that for every kind of step along the way?
Yeah, I mean, I'll do a little self-promoting here. I mean, the Pineapple Academy was developed specifically to handle these kind of things. I mean,
I see.
We have the tools and the ability with our online training program to have this competency check skills. We have certificate programs. We have pathways for success for your operation that can be tailored to what the needs are of your organization. And so, I think, in all honesty, and I don't really know of any other competitors out there that are doing it exactly the way we're doing it. We like to think that ours is a better way of bringing that content to the students. All of our content's in 5 minutes or less, so it's very digestible. It's like a YouTube style training courses, training videos that are built one on top of the other. So you don't need to know anything about food service. You can hire somebody with a great attitude who loves food, who gets excited about being part of your team, and you bring them in the door, and we can get them on the right pathway to teach them the right way so they can become a valuable contributor to the team.
I should have you send me a check, because I literally was not trying to set you up like that. I really did not know you. I didn't know you.
Yeah, I mean, this is why I'm so passionate about this subject, is because I've based my whole business on this premise, and it's because I have witnessed it myself through all these years that I've been in food service. From the day I became a pot washer, I observed from the moment I walked into that restaurant back in Amherst, Massachusetts, back in the early 80s, that, I was fortunate. I had a good mentor. The sous chef there was a great guy. And he, as soon as he saw I was eager, he started training me. The very first thing he trained me on was how to wash the romaine lettuce for Caesar salad. And the second thing he taught me was how to use a 10-inch French knife to cut the lettuce. And so, that sticks in my mind. Here we are, 43 years later, I'm telling you the story, and that's how much of an impact it had on me personally. And that has set the tone for my career.
Greg, as we wrap up, tell us, what is your best idea to help another executive hire someone? Or maybe it's not even an executive, maybe it's just a manager.
I think the first thing that we all have to do as managers is really evaluate the job descriptions and the job flows of what is actually, what people are actually doing, and really understand each position in the kitchen and in the food service department and how one dovetails to the other. And I think you're going to find that probably a lot of your job descriptions and job flows are probably outdated. And so I think you have to take a fresh look at that, like on a regular basis. You probably need to have it, maybe there's a quieter time of year where you can just, continually refine and look at the job flows of everybody in the kitchen. So that way, when you're interviewing somebody, you really know what the job is and really understand what it is you're looking for. But you also want to look for that other layer of attitude. And can you envision this person, running this kitchen one day? Is this someone who's going to be with you for a while? Or are they just looking, for a part-time job while they're going through college? But at least you know what their expectations are. There's nothing wrong with hiring a high school or college student when you know they're only going to be there for 3 shifts a week for a couple of years and then they're gone. Because those are important positions to fill as well, and they give you some latitude with your full-time people. I'm not discounting that. But for everybody else who's going to be a full-time employee, if you can't envision where they're going to be 3 years from now, or where they could be with some mentoring and coaching and training, then, you probably need to look at that. Like I said, that interview and hiring process a little tighter, because if you're not hiring somebody for a future as well as meeting today's needs, then I think you're doing yourself a disservice and you're doing that person a disservice. And unfortunately, in food and beverage, particularly in the restaurant industry, there's a lot of knee-jerk reaction to hiring. Going back to my experience, my very first restaurant experience, I had put an application in with this chef, actually just in the restaurant, and I dropped it off. And a week later, I got a phone call at 5:00 on a Friday evening from a guy who identified himself as the executive chef of this restaurant, and his pot washer was a no-call, no-show, and he was hoping I could come in right away to help him get through the weekend. That's how I got hired. And so less than an ideal situation, fortunate for me, but do you really want to be hiring people because you're desperate? How did you become desperate in the first place? That's the question that needs to go through your head.
Right. No, I think that's a very practical way to go back and reevaluate how you're hiring and taking a fresh look at attitudes.
Yes.
And, to your point, if they don't have good manners, if they're not respectful of others, if they're not showing signs that maybe they're a foodie, it's going to be hard to see them, running the operation.
That's right.
Greg, I got to tell you, I really appreciate, what you're doing to improve the overall culture within food and beverage, because it's been talked about quite a bit on this podcast and on others, that we have a retention, we have a turnover, we have an attraction problem. And once you take your kind of, I think you called it that transactional environment, that transactional culture, once you begin to make that transition into a culinary culture, now you can tell stories. Now you can, bring a new potential employee in, and they can meet with someone that they might want to emulate, and that person can say, I started as a dishwasher.
That's exactly right.
It's like, wow. Okay, these guys aren't just talking, because there's a lot of washing over things, right?
Yes.
In the green space where there's a lot of green washing, and so you can kind of culture wash too.
Yes.
And this eliminates that, right? Proofs in the pudding. Here they are.
It really does. I'll give you an example. Somebody that I know who's done some work for me and is a respected chef who does a great job. She got hired to be the corporate chef for this restaurant company based in Massachusetts. And she ended up staying less than 2 months because the solution that this company came up with to save money and time was to make all the managers work 75 or 80 hours a week and eliminate the hourly positions.
Beautiful idea.
So these are people who are there to manage and have career development, but all you've done is turn them into, basically, excuse the, I'm not even going to go there, but
yeah, I think we can all fill in the blank there.
Yeah, it's really, you talk about, taking advantage of a situation in a really all the wrong ways. Not that managers shouldn't be able to jump in and do tasks. I'm not saying that at all. Believe me, even in my management years, I've done more pots and pans than most. I get it. But at the same time, you can't take these managers and just think, they're going to do all of this and we're going to save money. That's not career development. That's not creating a healthy culture.
Well, Greg, this has been fantastic, and I really hope people do go to your website. In fact, why don't you tell us your website and some of the best ways for people to connect with you? Sure. Obviously, LinkedIn. I'll tag you on LinkedIn, but what are some other ways?
I'm on LinkedIn. We also have a company website under Pineapple Academy on LinkedIn, and our website is pineappleacademy.com. Could not be more simple. As a matter of fact, right there on the top of the website, there is a free 14-day free trial. You can go in and put your email address in there, and we'll get you can go into our system and take a look at all of our courses.
Greg, thank you so much. This has been very helpful.
Well, thank you, Tony. I appreciate it, and thanks for the opportunity to speak to you and your audience.
No, it's great. This is an area that definitely needs to be increased because, 2022 needs to be the year of, the food and beverage comeback.
There you go. I like that.
All right. Sounds good. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks so much.
Thank you.